Welcome to the train station. All aboard or all are bored.
Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we're incredibly excited to welcome a truly inspiring figure in Prince Edward Island politics, Karla to our show. Karla actually happens to be a Tosh alumni, has been a beacon of leadership and innovation as the elected MLA for District 12 Charlottetown Victoria Park since 2019. Her recent appointment as interim leader signifies a crucial chapter in her journey, showcasing her unwavering commitment to her community and the principles she stands for. Having Karla with us is a rare chance to gain first-hand insights into the driving forces behind PEI's political developments and the vision propelling them forward. Her experiences offer a unique lens on the challenges and triumphs that have defined her path and what they have done for the island's future. Karla, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our podcast. Your presence here is greatly appreciated, and we're all looking forward to uncovering the insights and stories you may have about politics in Prince Edward Island. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation. I was very excited to get it. After having met all three of you at the Rotary Youth Parliament, I was so excited when I saw on Compass that you were doing this, and of course with your fierce leader, Mr. Trainer.
Yeah, that's right.
So thank you so much for the invite. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. We may as well get going here. It's kind of just going to be more of like we're going to ask you a few questions and then we'll get your response and we'll create a conversation based off that.
Okay.
Our first question that we've come up with was, could you tell us about the journey that led you to pursue a career in politics and what specifically drew you to align yourself with the Green Party of Prince Edward Island?
Oh, that's a big question that I'm going to make the Coles Notes version answer for. So I was at the time... before, I'm trying to think when I got involved, I think it was right after the 2015 election when Peter was elected. I was teaching at the time and was really seeing a lot of inequities in our education system. I just finished my counseling degree and had done a little work placement at the provincial addiction treatment facility and kind of saw the gaps in care there as well, and was just frustrated with systems and never even thought of politics as a step. And then Peter got elected, and he was kind of, to me, a very refreshing voice, and he just seemed like the kind of person I wanted to get to meet, which had never happened to me before with a politician. So fast forward a little bit, I met Peter at an event. I told him that I had been I forgot the most important part of the story. So in 2015, I was playing roller derby, and I can't even say I was in roller skates when this happened, so it's not cool, but I broke both of my arms and my nose.
Oh my goodness.
So I had just finished my work placement at the addiction treatment facility, was supposed to go back to teaching grade 1 and ended up with 2 broken arms. So I had a lot of time on my hands, and there was an election coming up. So I wrote letters to all of the leaders of the parties and started delivering them. And these were letters on education and mental health and addictions care for the province. And the only person to respond was Peter Bevenbaker. And he was also someone that I was very interested in, having heard him speak. So we kind of fast-tracked, and he had reached out to me, one time and said, he's having some trouble keeping up because he was the only Green elected. So anytime there would be anything to do with education or mental health, he'd ask me to look it over, tear it apart, any questions I had, any comments I had. So I started doing that work. And then he was starting a shadow cabinet. He asked me to be a part of the shadow cabinet. After a very long time thinking about that, my answer was yes, but I will never run. And once I got into that role and started to see what kinds of changes that you can make, or at the very least advocate really hard for, I really got interested at that point.
Oh, that's awesome! Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting story.
Very interesting story. Yeah.
To kind of add to that, like you mentioned, you never wanted to get into politics, but then you eventually ended up running in 2019, as I mentioned earlier. As someone who's successfully run for office, what advice would you give to a young woman and individuals from diverse backgrounds considering a career in politics?
That's such a great question. Being a white woman with lots of supports of both my family life and personal life, a very supportive husband, I had, not that I had a lot of financial resources, but I had, I could look after that myself. but surrounding yourself with supportive people. And so organizations, if you don't have a lot of support, if you're looking to make that step, organizations like the Coalition for Women in Government are so amazing. I just met with them this morning actually on some legislation, and they're really the voice and really looking at the barriers that women and gender diverse people face when they do try to enter politics. And once they do get into politics, anything that might come up for them, whether it be online bullying or harassment or anything like that. So surrounding yourself with those organizations is so important. I didn't know about them at the time, but they are a very well established organization with so many resources and so much knowledge. If you're someone just starting out, they would be a great starting point. They're enthusiastic, they're supportive, and they're so welcoming. It's a really comfortable environment.
Okay, very nice. Yeah. Do you mind if I pop a question?
No,
here?
go ahead.
So, you were saying earlier that there was there maybe a specific moment where you were like, Peter Bevan Baker, this is the guy that I want to follow. I want to talk to this guy. I want to get to know him a little better. Is there any specific moment like that with him?
Where it started was, I can't even remember if it was like a debate. Might have been the first time that I heard him speak, and he just, to me, sounded so genuine, and I didn't hear a lot of rhetoric in his answers at the time. And then whenever I handed out all those letters, and he was the one who got back to me, and I was excited by that. I wasn't surprised by that for some reason. When I met him for the first time, I instantly liked him. And then the next couple of times I met him, he was the same every time, which is the same to this day. So I guess it was right from the start for me hearing him speak. I found he stood out from the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah.
I have Karla, I've had a chance, you and I go back a long way.
Yes, we
When
do.
you did not only, I wasn't here when you graduated, but I was here when you did your practice teaching. I think it was with Nicole Hare at the time, and then so then you went on your journey in education. Like along the way, we make a lot of transitions, right? We become a teacher, then you went into counseling, and then from there to politics. What aspects maybe of education that you were familiar with that made you a better politician?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that in anything that you have in kind of, for me, what was important is communication stuff and trying to understand diverse backgrounds. And I think the most important aspect of it is critical thinking. And it's something that I'm genuinely concerned about for young people now. I feel like that's a really important skill, is to be able to look at things critically and not believe everything you hear on first whim, and to hear, there's more than one side of the story. And also with my counseling degree, that has been invaluable. As an MLA, you get a lot of people calling you for various reasons, and some of them are quite vulnerable, and some of them are dealing with some quite traumatic situations. And so just having that background knowledge and that experience has been incredibly helpful for me. I sometimes wonder how I would do this job without having a counseling degree, to be honest.
Yeah. Certainly, it gives you some diversity and perspective, and being able to direct people towards resources that they may need.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and it's definitely a navigational role at that level. And when there's no services there, you have to deliver that news to them. That as much as you've got all these things at your fingertips, but if you can't connect them to a service and you can't help them, it's a really difficult conversation to have with someone. For both ends, it's hard to say that, and it's hard to hear that.
Yeah, it's interesting point. It was, I think, a number of years ago, I think it might have been the 2015 election, I actually had the students in my political studies class kind of like take a look at party platforms. And I remember one young girl coming in one time, and she went through, and she was quite impressed with the Green Party's platform, that it entailed everything, not only just about environment, but also in social issues and the likes. And, I'm just wondering, are platforms today, like with the use of social media and stuff like that, how instantly you can get a message out? But platforms take a lot of thinking, and you actually put down and you look at, this is what we'll do if we're elected. Like, is it kind of a lost art, or is it something that we need to kind of focus on? It's to take a look at party platforms, and this is where we stand on certain issues, right?
Yeah, and I do feel that it's a dying art, but it's so unfortunate because it really does give you, now I say that, and at the same time, as Greens, we've never had the opportunity to put our platform into action. But when we were building, I wasn't a part of the 2015 platform, but I was a part of the 2019 one and the 2023 one. And even the way we divided it up, if we were elected, this is what we would do right away, this is what we would do in 10 years, and this is what we do in 25, to show the vision that we had for Prince Edward Island. Because I think that's something that's really lacking in a lot of platforms is, and even now in government, like, what is the plan? What is the vision? Because without a vision, you're running around blindly. And I feel like that's what we're doing right now as we consider healthcare and housing and education. A lot of those things, it feels like there's just so much, it's so top heavy and bureaucratic that we're just having a hard time finding our way out. And so I think that there's two sides to that. I think a platform is absolutely important because you get the sense of the values of a party and the vision. Now, the other side of it, again, which we haven't had an opportunity to put into place, is following through with that. Because a platform is just words on a paper if it's not followed through on. And I guess that's the role of the opposition, to make sure that government does follow through on that plan.
Yeah.
I kind of changed tracks a little bit, but when you said opposition, it made me think of it. The recent District 19 by-election, it led to kind of an unprecedented opposition position per se. Yeah, kind of a unique situation in Canada. And you being the interim leader, do you have any insights or knowledge? Because for viewers that would have listened to our District 19 by-election episode, we kind of covered this and covered it was a good one.
It's a great one.
And kind of covered what actually happened historically in Canada, in Alberta, and also in the House of Commons with the Bloc Québécois.
That's right.
But what do you foresee happening with your party?
Well, we shall wait and see. So last week, it was funny because when the by-election was called, people all over the place were talking about it. It never even dawned on me at that point. But people are like, "Ooh, does that mean that you may form official opposition?" Right? Like, so there was so much public interest in that, and so of course, then when the time came, we thought, this isn't our decision to make. The voters, if you look at the percentage of the popular vote, the Greens took that in both 2023 and in 18 of the 27 districts, we were first or second place. And now with the high percentage of the popular vote in the by-election, if we're honoring what Islanders voted for, that would put us in the official opposition. And so we felt it was our responsibility to go to the Speaker. Ultimately, it's up to the Speaker to make that decision. So it's really out of our hands, but we have submitted a letter, which you can see online, it's public, and just kind of outlining our reasons on why this is worth a consideration. And so regardless, the work's going to be done, but it's interesting because this is the first time in PEI history that a third party has come into play like this. And so I think that's really exciting and really good for democracy.
It's going to be incredible to see what happens here. Well, we don't have much time before it comes back.
No,
as well.
February 27th.
That's right. Yeah.
But it gives time for the like the speaker to actually would have to kind of consult with. Obviously, there's no precedent.
Yeah.
So I think you look and you consult with the rest of the country, and I think the one time in Saskatchewan, what they did is they had two interim leaders, a tied opposition. And they recognize both as the leaders of the official opposition and then shared time. So it would be interesting. And then they've also looked at Yukon. I came across the document Yukon. They've looked at Canada, New Brunswick. So I think it's time to go to the rule book and nationally, and then look at setting a precedent. Very much like Sunday shopping, the debate on Sunday shopping on PEI, how it kept tying, and the Speaker, I think at the time, Kathleen Casey, kept advancing it and saying, let's go to another level, let's debate this a little bit more. And
it'll be interesting to see. One of the phrases I've been hearing a lot coming out of different government areas is, well, that's the way we've always done things. And it infuriates me because just because that's the way you've always done things doesn't mean that's the way to do things. So I think this is an opportunity, whether it happens or not. If it does, I just think it just adds a level of excitement to all of this. And if it doesn't, that's fine too, and I look forward to hearing the reasoning behind the decision, whatever it happens to be. Yeah.
It's still not going to, you're still going to be there debating the issues, right?
Yeah. Basically the difference is the time allocation, really.
Right.
As you get ready for a new session, obviously there's preparation. There's research to be done. Do you see any major emerging issues that you think will dominate in the legislature?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Prince County Hospital, what's happening at Prince County Hospital, and then as a result from that, what happens to other healthcare facilities trying to carry that load. And it's interesting because a conversation that keeps coming back, both from constituents and from different people who are or have been involved in government, is that lack of accountability. We don't have clear frameworks. If we use healthcare as an example, we don't have clear frameworks on whose responsibility is, let's say, recruitment and retention. Who is exactly responsible for what and what is their role? So that we can, because people need to be accountable. And if you don't know, the other night at the Prince County Hospital meeting, when the town hall that was organized by Dan Kutcher, the mayor, the minister was in response to a question about retention and recruitment specifically. He said, well, I'll look into that. But he shouldn't be the one to look into that. He should be the one to say, oh, I'm going to talk to so-and-so whose job that is. But it was very evident to me in that meeting that those clear frameworks just aren't there. I've heard it, but that to me was a really clear example. And they matter. They matter a whole lot, because if someone's not pulling their weight in the areas they're supposed to, there needs to be consequences. And if they're doing a good job, they need to be thanked for that good job. And we need to look at what they're doing to perhaps incorporate it into a bigger scale. And so the way it's being done right now, nobody wins. And how do things get better? It starts with accountability.
Yeah. I found it interesting. You were at that public forum on that Friday night.
Yeah.
And then the committee, you guys as a committee actually met, which I was telling my class, like, it's very rare that you actually get traveling committees, right?
Yeah.
I've seen it in Ottawa. I've seen Senate committees and I've seen House of Commons committees. They might come to Halifax or travel, but that was kind of neat how that actually going to listen and being available, right?
Yeah, it was great. We did it oh my gosh, but in the last year we also did one for housing, where we went across the province to hear from different communities on housing solutions, which was also really effective. Because what we do at committee work is listen to what people say, and the clerk's there typing away like mad because she's taking recommendations from people and adding those into a report so that we submit then to Legislative Assembly to urge government to do whatever. And so that's why committees are important. So taking them to communities helps you get more voices. So taking them to communities gives better equity for people.
Yeah. I think you and I have kind of alluded to this in the past, and we've had a chance to chat, but it's a lot of work goes on in the committee works. A lot of work of government, and it's time consuming. As opposed to that 45-minute question period where there's a bit of theatrics and it's fun to watch and sparks fly. But sparks can fly in committee meetings too.
Can they
ever? But I think that's where decisions are made and recommendations are put forward, right?
Yeah.
In terms of whether it's legislation or whatever.
And when Dennis King's administration was first elected, they changed the structure of committees, which was very welcomed at the time. So it was 2 Greens, 2 Liberals, 2 Conservatives on every committee. But of course, this time we went from 8 to 2 members, so now that means Peter and I sit on every single committee, but we won't have to anymore. And so I personally, it's so overwhelming sitting on every committee, because I'm someone who likes to be prepared so that I can ask good questions. That's my job. And I love it because I have my finger on the pulse of everything happening in the province. And so I'm not an expert, don't get me wrong, but I can speak to a little bit about what's happening in a whole bunch of different areas. And that has been so helpful, and it's been so interesting and overwhelming, and I love it so much. And as we divvy up, now that we've got a third, hi Matt, now that we've got a third there looking at the division of that work, it's going to be hard to give up some of those committees.
Yeah.
But of course, and the beauty of it is you can attend as a member anytime. But one change that happened in committees this time, which I don't agree with at all, and so the Conservatives now have 2 more members, paid members. As leaders of opposition parties, you don't get paid to go to committees, so that's kind of an essential part of like volunteer work for your job. Yeah. But these 2 members go to every committee. They don't have voting rights. If there's a big agenda and there's not enough time for questions, they're the first ones to fall off, but they get paid to be at these committees. And so I'm not sure the goal. I don't know what the point of that is, but that was also a change that came in this time.
Okay. I'm actually going to rebound off of one of your statements there. You said that you have to attend every single committee. Well, you had to attend every single committee meeting there. How do you find that balance between like personal life and your work?
That is such a good question, and it almost takes me back. This would be my advice to young women and gender diverse people getting in, and really to anyone getting into politics.
Okay.
This job could, as in many jobs, teaching could too, could suck you up. And you could do this job 24/7. But one of the things that I made very clear going into, and now especially as interim leader, is I have boundaries. My family comes first. They always have and they always will. And so I am not going to be the politician that you see at every single thing. And that was one of the things I said to myself in the beginning. If I don't get elected because I'm not at every event, that's okay. People want something from me. I can't give them. And so I say no to things. If I've had a stressful, crazy week, but there's the strawberry social on Saturday and I need to spend time with my family, then I'm going to send a letter of regret. You just, two things. You cannot take yourself seriously. I laugh at myself all the time. That's how I survive. Humor is the most important part of life. Oh shoot, I lost my train of thought.
No way.
Oh. Anyway,
it's okay if it doesn't come back. I have another
Yeah.
question that kind of
sure.
kind of correlates with what you asked.
Nice.
In a sense, it kind of does and it kind of doesn't. When the legislature is actually not in session, what does your day look like? What are your typical day-to-day duties as an MLA? Because I think a lot of general population don't necessarily know that information, and like I myself, I'm like, I don't know what your day would consist of.
A lot of people think that we're off when the legislature's not sitting, but actually it's a lot more work when the legislature's not sitting in some aspects.
Okay.
So Mondays are constituency days, and so typically, people are staying in their own constituencies. Mine happens to be where the legislative assembly office is, which is great. I can meet there. So it's a lot of helping people navigate. That's so when the legislature's sitting, Monday is the day you have to do all your constituency stuff. So when you have the full week, you've got committee meetings, which are typically Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, sometimes the evening, and sometimes they're on Fridays. And they can go all day. So sometimes most of my week is consumed by committees when the House isn't sitting. It wasn't like that before. And so before I had more of an opportunity to reach out to community organizations and just, kind of get up to date on what they're working on to see how I can support their work. So really that's a time to really build strong connections with organizations and with individuals who are doing work that you see aligning with yours or that challenges your own work, that makes you consider things in different ways. So I spend a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time on emails, a lot of time with both constituency meetings and getting ready for committee meetings. And when you have because we're getting legislation ready now, and so that's consulting with a lot of organizations, so meetings. So there is never a dull moment, and it's so funny as someone who's always tended to work 8 to 4 or 5, whatever. I find it really hard to be like, okay, so I'm working from 10 o'clock this morning until 10 o'clock tonight, so I'm going to go for a swim at 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And I almost feel like I'm doing something wrong because I'm so trained, to work 8 to 4. But this job is really, you do it when you can. And some days you've got some free time, you've got some flexibility, and other days you're just running nonstop. You're running a marathon. You pick up your phone on a Sunday and thinking, oh, no one called, and you have 5 messages. So it's a balance.
I had an interesting question. I grew up, when I was going to university, the legislatures met Tuesday and Thursday nights. And sometimes we could go down as students, right, and watch the legislature. Do you think that change of not eliminating the night sessions has changed the roles of MLAs, or has it made it better?
That's a great question. That recommendation to do that came from the Coalition for Women in Government's report, Whose Job Is It Anyway? And I think it was 2011 or 2009 that report was written. So that's something community organizations have been advocating for, to make it more accessible for women, for gender diverse people, because often it's more challenging. If you think historically, it was the mom's role to take care of the children while the dad went out to work, And so and given that the reason we had evening sittings was because the train couldn't take the MLAs home until the end of the evening, so the legislative hours were built around the train schedule. Yeah. All in order.
There we go.
A lot of connections. And so I know that there are some who have said, and I believe too, it does take away people's ability to get there if they themselves work during the day. Honestly, I feel it's just my personal observation, that it's a lot more to the point and effective. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like it gets, in the evening sessions you get tired and you're not as engaged. Yeah. But I personally feel that for the legislative work, it feels a bit more efficient to me. As for the public access, there's definitely an impact there. Yeah. But we also can have evening sittings if we want to organize something. Yeah. Like if your class ever wanted to come down, we can organize that in advance so that we would have an evening sitting. So that option is still there.
Okay. I had one more question, but then you said something and it drew me back to another question that I had that I didn't get to ask. As a woman in a leadership role, what are your thoughts on the representation of women in Canadian politics? And is there anything that can be done to encourage more women to actually enter the political realm?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. There's so much ugliness in politics from the outside and from the inside too. But honestly, I feel like politics brings out the best in me in so many situations. And I don't know that I've heard Peter say that before, but I don't know I've heard many politicians say that before. I'm disappointed. I think that we were in a committee meeting the other day with Dr. Jane, and he was talking about COVID, and he said the powerhouse trifecta, I think is what he called it, and he was talking about Marian Dowling, Dr. Heather Morrison, and Denise Lewis-Fleming, who were kind of the three women in charge during COVID. And look how well we got through COVID, at a point where, because, the Premier gets a lot of credit for getting through COVID, and great. If we really think about that, that was a one time the Premier stepped back and let them do their job. And I just think, we don't give women enough of an opportunity. And even when we think we do, there's still things like, it came from the Coalition for Women in Government to change those hours. It wasn't a personal thought, and I support it because a women's organization who studied it a lot came out with that recommendation. And so, we have to really think critically, and we go back to thinking critically about what are the barriers that are keeping women out. And really, a lot of women just don't see themselves reflected. It's like, in order to make the change, the change has to happen. And so supporting more women, it's such a good question. I think that we need to look at if we offered childcare for members, if we just listened to, and that report's full of them, but listen to what women are saying. And it can be, you can take some harassment in this job and not, it can be intimidating when it's coming from a man and you're a woman. So there's a lot.
I just got to run to class to start my political class. Oh, listen, if you have a minute, you want to just drop in just around the corner there?
Yeah, what room?
106.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, the same.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, do you mind if you're a minute late? I have one more question.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
We can stay for a little bit.
That's the bell for us to go to class, but I have so many more questions I want to ask, and it's been such an engaging conversation that I want to keep going.
Well, I'm having fun, but I don't want to get you guys in trouble.
I don't think I'm going to get in trouble. Unless you're on a time constraint.
No, I do. I have a meeting at 2 in Charlotte, so I have some time. Yeah.
What ones of these did you want to ask?
I'd actually like to ask, you said sometimes you will get some backlash from people. How do you help yourself cope with that or deal with that?
That is such a good question, and I don't know how to answer it really. So when I decided to run for politics, my family was shocked because, I wanted to be a school counselor. I was a school counselor. Yeah. So when I told my father said, not trying to discourage me, but he just said, Karla, my gosh, you can't do that. Your skin's too thin. And I said, I know, Dad, but I'm doing it. And I guess where I come from, something that I say to Peter often at the end of a sitting, because now there's just the two of us, and those days can be rough. It's very toxic in that space, as you know, Campbell. Yeah. And so it can be pretty discouraging. But at the end of the day, I'll often look at Peter and be like, we can hold our heads high today because we were honest, we fought for what we believe in, and we were strong. And I feel that every day, for the most part, and so to me, if I'm doing that, everyone's got an opinion, and they feel that they can be mean about it, and they can just say whatever they want. Sometimes it's anonymous. Yeah. So I guess for me, I just, in my mind, as a counselor, I kind of had this skill already where, it's like you have a protective layer around you, right? Because you don't want to take on other people's stories and other people's trauma. And so it's very much a skill that I use every day here. And whether I like repressing it or dealing with it healthily, the jury's out. But it just really is that feeling of I am doing my best. I might not always be right. I might say things that I, later on I think, ooh, that wasn't right. But I'm living and I'm learning and I'm doing my best and I try to be honest and transparent. And if at the end of the day, I'm still getting criticism, then it's easy to just say but sometimes in that criticism, there's genuine stuff. So if it's a genuine critique, then I look at that and it's helped me change my mind on things. So, it's not always, I don't take it as always a negative thing.
Right.
Just like right now with the med school, right? Yeah. People are questioning it and they're, and people are defensive when they're questioning it. We need to ask questions and we need to hear everybody's side,
And Dr. Dickinson made a great point at the last standing committee that was in Somerset at the Creighton place. He said that this should have happened 15 years ago when our province could have sustained a medical school. And I was like, I could not agree with you more and you also mentioned the other standing committee with Dr. Jane. I listened to that one as well, and he was going on saying, if you look at a province-by-province basis and all of the other provinces that have a medical school built, none of the provinces are withdrawing funding from them, saying this is not working, this is not helping to recruit and retain physicians in our area, we're actually going to close it. He said it just doesn't happen. Once they're built and once they're successful, they typically have enough what's the word I'm looking for? Traction, but I was trying to look for a train pun, but I couldn't get one. They typically have enough traction to keep moving, which I think she's going to be good. I have another question. It may relate to a lot of the things that I've been asking you, because I've been asking a lot of what it's like to get involved in politics and a lot of the challenges that you face along the way. Politics can often seem like a complex and overwhelming field, particularly again for young individuals like ourselves. Who may be eager to get involved but kind of feel unsure where to start. With this in mind, could you share how you navigated these challenges and prepared yourself for the role of an MLA? With policy knowledge and switching from an educator to a member of the legislative. It's kind of a hefty question, but
that's a huge question, and it just, I have to say, my whole life, I don't know if you're familiar with the theory of happenstance, but it's basically the theory that says you move through your life, you work hard, but you just end up in these places that you didn't intend. It just happened, and that's how I very much feel about politics. And so, because I had that background knowledge and I got involved with the party before, I got to learn a bit about policy before being thrown into it. So if it's something you're considering, if you've got a party that you feel aligned with, it's worth reaching out to them. If you don't feel aligned to the Greens but you want to know more about it, I always tell people, please feel free to reach out. You don't have to align with me for me to share kind of, how to navigate things. And so I had a bit of background policy through those years when I was involved and being on the shadow cabinet. And so I got to look at things. I got to look at education from a different perspective. So I found it super interesting. But the other biggest thing too, once I was elected, the people that actually, they were already in place because Peter was elected, but the people we've had in our office have been honestly what sustained me in politics. So supportive, great sense of humor, because like I said before, if I'm not laughing, I'm in trouble. So just an office and taking care of every need, we've got Sue in our office who makes sure that we're fed and makes sure that I've got my greetings for the day and really helps keep me on track, what my needs are so that I can go and do that job. Because like you say, it's overwhelming. There's so many things. And especially as you consider healthcare and housing and education and all these things that seem like they're burning right now, and you feel a bit like everything's important. So how do you narrow down? And I honestly think that the only thing, I guess, I always say, if you're not learning, you're not living. And having been in the position since 2019, I think I've learned a lot and almost learned that while problems are big, there's easy solutions. Little things that you can start advocating for. And that seems to make it feel less overwhelming. I think time makes it less overwhelming. And just, I guess, as someone who's been in there for a few years, it feels like a long time, it's so overwhelming, but really it's not. When you pick and choose, you have control over your schedule. If your party's not whipped, of course, like if you're given that freedom within politics, it's quite rewarding. I don't know if that answered the question.
It does. It does.
That was
like,
great. Thank you. Yeah.
Like all of them have been really good answers. Like it's so. This conversation's been so engaging.
It's
I feel
been
like talking
great.
all day.
I only have one more question, unless you have something else you want to ask.
I think that let's end it on a positive note here.
Again, like reflecting on your time as an MLA, what moments have brought you the most joy or satisfaction in terms of making a positive impact in your community or the lives of people?
That's very easy. The Rotary Youth Parliament. I love it. And now there's another one on March 4th. It's Girls and Gender Diverse Rotary Parliament. So I'm really looking forward to that too. I guess having been a teacher and a counselor, I love engaging with young people. And I think that obviously I put legislation forward. We put it forward twice to lower the voting age to 16 because I think that 16-year-olds should have a say what's happening. If you consider what's happening in the world today, I'm sure you would love to have a say about the direction. And so anytime I can engage with young people, it fuels me. It really does. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to plug that I still haven't made it into the Kinkora High School yearbook. Kinkora. So, that's the only yearbook I won't be in this year. So
There's always
if anyone's listening,
there's always next year too.
There's always next year.
No, to add to that, like I loved time at
it was so fun.
Like that was probably one of my favorite weekends of anything that I've done in high school. Like hands down, there's no questions about it. And I know Ethan, who's not here today, feels the same way. Like we all enjoyed it so much, and like with the disappointing aspect to us, and that's why we're here where we are today, is that it's just a weekend and then it's over. It would be cool, like if in the future that actually they have a fall session and a spring session, and because like as the province changes and as legislation changes over that time, you would have different things to discuss, and you would be like engaged with each other over the year, but.
Yeah, and actually I'm excited that you asked that question because you reminded me that I've still got all the motions and legislation that you had worked on that I was going to take and turn into something for the actual sitting. So thank you for that reminder. I just forgot about that.
Awesome.
Because being able to bring forward people's voices, that's the other really exciting part. Like when I brought forward the third option, which allows people who have been victims of sexual assault, survivors of sexual assault, to have their kits stored so that they have some time to think about if they want to press charges, and extending family violence leave to all workers, and just a few things that I was able to do as a result of people coming to me and advocating for something, and then you get to be the person to bring forward that change, and it's really exciting.
Yeah,
I'm sure it feels very fulfilling and warm.
It does, and sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes you can't, right? Or sometimes it's voted down. But you're in the position where potentially you can make some really good changes.
Yeah, that's great.
I know. Speaking from my perspective as well, being able to go to that event and being a student that you think that it's just a practice and that's just a mock legislation per se, but like you mentioned, you're going to be reviewing the bills and resolutions we passed and seeing if there's any valuable information you can take and actually present to the actual legislature, and having an actual impact as a student. So I encourage anyone who would may be listening who has the opportunity to participate next year, do it. Or for the upcoming one. I don't know if applications have closed for that one yet.
I believe that they did, but I do know they were having trouble finding people. So if you are interested in that, if you check out the Coalition for Women in Government page, if you want to reach out to them, they may accept some late applicants if they didn't get enough. Because I was reaching out to organizations to let them know about it. So definitely. It's so fun, and I love it.
So did we. I don't have anything else to say.
I think that's it for
thank you for coming on. It was, again, I've said this countless times throughout the episode, very engaging conversation.
So fun.
And we both loved it, and I'm sure Trainer felt the same way.
Yes,
thank 100%. You. I was very excited to be invited to be here. This is my second podcast.
Oh, really?
What was the first?
The first one was with Drake and Deboo. they were two young women, actually they're both in Ottawa now. They both, by the way of Sean Casey's office, they both work, Sweta's still there, but she was the executive director for the Coalition for Women in Government, very politically astute minds, and so they did, Drake and Deboo is the name of the podcast, it's still on like Spotify, and it is incredible. So I was on about lowering the voting age when I was on that podcast, but just a really good, they're well informed. And actually might be interesting for you because it's a similar sort of podcast, so it might be interesting for you to kind of get some other perspectives on it.
I'm probably going to be taking a listen to that
I would
later.
say so too.
Recommend it. I recommend anyone to listen to it because they are amazing. Those two women are, you heard it here first, they're going to change the world.
I look forward to hearing that then.
Me too.
Awesome.
Very nice. I think that's everything.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for everything that you do. This is so important because as you consider thinking critically, like when I heard you guys were doing this and it came from the Rotary Youth Parliament, like that is so cool. The ripple effects that come from one thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and to educate other young people about politics because it's boring to people, you know, but it's not. It's quite exciting. And it can be.
That's what we found during this. Like, there's some conversations that we get so like engaged in, and we're so excited, and we get very passionate when we're speaking to them. But I'm confident, like I can confidently say, without the Rotary Youth Parliament, I don't think we would be sitting where we are today. I don't think any of this would have actually happened.
100%.
Like it again, as you mentioned, the ripple effect. It just has been great.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.